full screen.
אז זהו, בוקר טוב, צהריים טובים, מצוין, כל הכבוד. שלום לכולם, אנחנו פה פעם שנייה מארחים את רון, שיסביר לנו קצת על cost segregation. רון, English, Hebrew, what do you prefer to do it?
Whatever you prefer, I can do it in both. What do you guys want? I'm probably going to use English anyway because the terminology is English.
Let's keep it in English. If somebody wants to ask a question in Hebrew, no problem. I can translate or we'll do whatever it is. But we'll do the presentation in English. Cost segregation is a tax strategy that helps us save a lot of money and help us with the cash flow, especially in the first few years of owning a new property. So it's an excellent way to increase cash flow. And Ron going to explain us the in and outs of it. And if anybody has a questions, unless it's super urgent, wait for the end of the segment, ask the question, and then we'll continue. But let's Ron speak. Ron going to stop once in a while when he's ready and ask for a question, and feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question, and then go back and we're going to go back to the presentation. Ron, it's all yours now.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, Tal, for hosting me second time. I have to say that I believe, and I heard a lot from real estate investors, that this is probably one of the most important things that many investors are not fully familiar with. Some of them know something about cost segregation and what it is. They know the term accelerated depreciation, which we're going to explain in a minute. But those who do know will tell me and tell you that this is probably the number one saving, a process that saves you on tax money, help you keep money in your pocket, reinvest in other properties. And it's probably one of the most important things you should know after you make an investment. Before, there is a lot of other things, and I think that Tal refers to that a lot. But after making the investment, it's very important to know what cost segregation is. And I think the main proof I can give you is that the latest budget bill that was approved for what they call the Big Beautiful Bill, it was approved over the summer, brought back what's called 100% bonus depreciation on real estate properties, which shows you how much the U.S. government, and that includes the IRS, of course, wants investors to use this process to benefit from it. And of course, the reason to benefit is that you reinvest your money, and therefore they return that. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. So let's jump into the presentation. So the title is a little long here. The real term to use is cost-based depreciation on real estate property. It's the largest tax saving process for real estate investors, and it's achieved via a cost segregation study. I'm going to talk about something called the Tangible Property Regulation, which came out in 2014, so it's about 11 years old. It's relatively still new, and that is the main regulation that defines cost segregation for real estate investors like us. Initially, when cost segregation started about 25 years ago, it was for bigger properties, at least 2 million, 3 million and above. Today, you can apply it easily on $500,000 property. I would say that should be the starting limit, $500,000 properties, and go up. But I'm doing even properties less than that. And another thing to know is that you can do it on properties that you already purchased in the past. Let's say go back up to 6, 7 years back. So to continue a little bit about myself, so very briefly, I'm a business development professional for many years. I've worked for over 30 years with different, mainly technology companies in the US, Israel, Europe, Asia Pacific. I was in C-level position with different large and small companies. I represented a number of companies you might recognize, like Ford Motor Company, NTT Japan. I was a country manager for a few Israeli startups. I'm myself a small real estate investor and a business coach. I have a master in NLP. Those are familiar, neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm a coach using NLP techniques. And I'm working with as a national account executive for Cost Segregation Services, Inc., which is the leading company in the United States for cost segregation since 2017, but primarily in the last 2-3 years. I was just busy with other things, and I gladly discover how beautiful this process is. The following presentation, just a disclaimer, it's not going to be inclusive of everything. The tangible property regulation itself is about a 700 pages text code. It's one of the most extensive text codes that came in the last 50, 60 years. And it's all about cost segregation and about how investors should handle their real estate property in reference to capital versus direct expenses. And we'll touch that in a minute, okay? So this is by all means not inclusive, but it is, I think will give you a very good idea. So I have an example that I would call it the hamburger example. What is a Big Mac? So a Big Mac is, you can say it's a hamburger, but if you go into more details, you say, okay, it's also made of 2 beef patties, there is sauce, there's lettuce, tomatoes, there's sesame seed buns. So it's made of different components, okay? And if you go deeper into that, and by the way, you'll see the term straight line and cost segregation. I'll explain that in a minute. Where straight line refers to the old method, cost segregation refers to the current new method, and we'll go into more detail. So a little bit more looking inside into that Big Mac, you also have costs associated with that to make it, okay? These are old costs, so just look at it as an example, right? So the beef costs $3.99, the sauce costs 20 cents, the lettuce this. So you have breakdown of the different costs that make up this hamburger, okay? What's a building? So again, we can look at a real estate building as just one unit, one building, windows, doors, roof, anything, and relate to it as a property, as one building. And it's made of, there is roofing and windows and doors and electrical and plumbing and carpeting and flooring and many, many other things. But again, so in the old days, we look at the whole building as one unit. Today, we are looking at something that is a little bit different, and that's what cost segregation is about, and I'm jumping straight into what it is. So cost segregation is the process of analyzing and identifying commercial or residential building component. It's called building units. That's the legal term, building units, that are eligible for accelerated depreciation. They increase the depreciation expense and basically help you keep more money in your pocket, okay? Well, once you increase your expenses, you get to keep more money in your pocket, and this is what the process is helping you. Guys, you can stop me with questions, but if you give me just a little bit more, maybe you'll have even better questions or more questions, okay? So this is a very simple definition. We analyze the property to identify building components that are eligible for accelerated depreciation, increasing our depreciation expense, keeping money in our pocket. Just as a general rule of thumb, and don't take it as a one and only rule, but you can save probably anywhere between 6 to 10% on your cost in the short term. That means immediately, and get this money in tax credit or in tax cash, whichever you prefer. Okay, this is important to know. What we are dealing with is real cash that goes back to you, or credit that you keep for your future tax obligations, okay? So anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000 on $1 million property cost, okay? Now, Let's define a little bit better what are straight line and what is cost segregation or cost-based depreciation, which is a better term. So straight line looks at the building as a whole. Cost segregation identify components or building units or systems, sometimes they call it, of a building, okay? So we separate the building to those units and provide a value to each of those units, okay? And I'll explain what it's used for in a minute. Straight line looking at a building as a structure, as a one structure component, where cost segregation is looking at a building as non-structural. In other words, anything that is beside the structure, whether it's the roof, whether it's the flooring, whether it's special decoration that you make in the building, whether it's special windows, doors, kitchen appliances, bathroom appliances. So there's a lot of different components that are included in it. Special electrical, special plumbing, etc. Straight line depreciation means that the property depreciates over 27 and a half years for residential or 39 years for commercial. That has been the law in the United States for probably 200 years, where in cost segregation, the depreciation is cut down to 5, 7, or 15 years on those specific components that we will show you in a minute, okay? All the non-structural building components, okay? What the 39 and 27 years mean, and then I'll say it and I'll say it again in a minute, is that if you buy a property, for example, for $1 million, and it's a residential, you basically divide it by 27 and a half years, you get a fixed number, and this is what your accountant will deduct as your depreciation expense every year, same amount. So it's called standard depreciation or straight line because it is the same amount every year, doesn't change. When you do cost segregation, I'll show you it looks very different. Okay, now cost segregation also applies to real property and personal property. What this means is, for example, if you buy a restaurant and you buy and it includes the kitchen and all the appliances, and that includes also in residential and in other commercial properties, that is part of what you paid for. It could be furnitures, it could be lighting, it could be a bar counter, it could be many things. Like a restaurant is the best place I like to meet people and explain about cost segregation because you can show a lot of things. But when you buy it, you pay for all of it. When you do cost segregation, you can accelerate a lot of those components and save even more than the percentage that I showed you before, okay? Just a little bit of history. This process started in a lawsuit that was filed against the IRS, believe it or not, by a thing called Hospital Corporation of America. They had a debt of about $800 million to the IRS. It's important to know the history because you'll understand why this thing has actually came alive. And they claim that the way that the IRS calculate depreciation is not fair because many components in their property depreciate much faster than 39 years, for example, in a hospital. For example, the air condition, the HVAC system doesn't last 39 years, or your roofing, you have to change much more often than 39 years. And even parking space, okay, you have to pave it and change it and upgrade it more often. So those are examples of some components that can be accelerated when you do depreciation. This went to the Supreme Court and became a law somewhere close to 2000, okay? So cost segregation has been around for about 25 years now. Now, stop me if you want to ask a question. I'm proceeding forward. Do you want to ask anything now? Anybody?
Yes. So when you said it's relevant from 500,000 or above, that is the price of what I bought the property for, or this is what the property worth?
No, it is based on cost, not on value. So good
Yeah,
question.
okay.
The answer is cost. And I have to say another thing is that you also need to deduct or allocate percentage for the land. Because land does not appreciate, or does not depreciate, I'm sorry. So the standard is to deduct 20% for land. That means that if you buy a $500,000, say residential, and even a single family residential, investment property, we're talking only about investment properties, of course, that means that you'll be left with 400,000 K. You deduct 20% from 500,000, and your cost basis in this case will be 400,000. There are cases where you can deduct less for land and increase your cost basis, which is good because then you can save more. It's supposed to come either from when you do the closing, it's either mentioned in your closing, it comes from the county or from the state tax records. So there are cases where it's less. But I can give you an example for cases where you don't have to allocate for land. For example, if you invest in condominiums, and I do quite a few condominiums, anywhere from 500,000 and above, there is no land because you don't own the land when you buy a condominium. That's where you can deduct, you can work with the full cost of the property. Okay?
For the straight line method, also you deduct the land?
Yes, it applies. It also applies on the old system. Yes, the land does not depreciate. Okay, so this is some example of building systems or building units. It could be the heating, ventilation. It could be plumbing, electrical. If you have special escalators, elevator, those are big buildings. Fire protection, alarm system, security system. There's so much more. I'm shushing. There's actually this. I need to update this list because even doors, special fixtures that you have in the buildings, special ceiling that you have. Flooring, like wood floor, okay? Because the structure doesn't come with a wood floor. This is added to the structure. So think about anything that is added to the structure is probably very relevant for cost-based depreciation. This is an old example, and I'll show you a new one later on. But like it shows you a building that costs 2 million. Now this is building cost, so this is after deducting the land. And it shows the accumulated depreciation. This happened to be 39 years, so that means it's a commercial building. And you can see here that instead of going with a straight line, meaning taking this whole amount and dividing it to 39 years, we identify components that are value 132,000, 199,000 for 15 years, and the rest 39 years. And based on this amount, we calculated a tax saving of 107,000 in this year, and it increased slightly over the first 3 years, but your total saving will be 160,000 in this case, okay? I'll show you a little better cases on this. This is what the results of our study, what your accountant will eventually receive. So the accountant, which now is only using one fixed number and deducting it as a depreciation expense, he will now have a cost value for the different components in your property and can use it, first of all, to get, and also a depreciation number, okay, to deduct every year. But he can also use it for additional saving in the long term. And that's the reason why I'm showing this. So let me jump 2 more slides. Oh, you know what? I'll get back to it in a second. Remember this slide, and I'll get back to explain to you what's your long-term benefits from cost segregation. The short-term benefit, like I explained, identifying the building components, assigning value to them, defining if they are 5, 7, or 15 years in terms of lifespan, and accelerating the depreciation on them, increasing your expense and keeping money in your pocket, okay? But let me show you just slightly bit more, and then I'll stop for more questions. So if you look graphically at what I explained so far, this is what it looks. The blue line, if you can see the color, is a straight line. That is the old depreciation method where every year it's the same amount. It's called standard or straight line depreciation. When you do a cost segregation process, you basically accelerate the depreciation over the first years to keep the money in your pocket, and then over the rest of the years, you will deduct kind of similar depreciation, but you still keep the amount that you save, and you can basically use it. And there's a table that will provide you with the value of money. You don't really need that. Everybody knows the value of money if it's here in your pocket and not with the IRS. Okay. So I want to go deep into what's called tangible property regulation. Not so deep because, like I said, it's a very extensive code. It came out in 2014, so it's really a little. It's just 11 years old by now. That's pretty new, and that's why a lot of investors are less familiar with that. And I should say that also a lot of CPAs. So it's good for you to know about it and share it with other colleagues of yours or CPAs. It's very valuable to know. This is a US code that came in 2014, and it's probably one of the most significant IRS regulation in over 50, 60 years. It basically creates a consistent method that deals with capitalized versus direct expenses, okay? And I want to say at this point that not only it saves you money, it also keeps you safe. It makes sure, because the number one reason for auditing in real estate is when investor expense items that should be capitalized, okay? And I know that most of us wants to expense it. Cost segregation actually gives you a great tool to expense things and stay safe and save money versus just do something that may result in a mistake and doing something wrong. And you'll see what I mean in a second, okay? So this is really what the regulation is about. A significant part of it relates to what's called repair, adaptation, betterment, and improvement. Happen to make the word Rabbi, so it's easy for us to remember here. So this deals basically with all the additional expense that you put into a property once you acquire it or over the years, and you can save money on it. Now, how does that look? So first of all, I guess we don't really need to explain those terms, but just so that you know, betterment refers to increasing the value of a property. And usually any renovation that you do is to increase the value. Adaptation is to bring it for different use, so you can add things to the property, etc. Or restoration to return to original condition, where expenses really, direct expenses really refers to ordinary operating maintenance, if you want, okay? Those can be expensed. Again, be very careful. It really depends on the amount spent and the item it's spent on, okay? So,
wait, stop it, Ron. Go back one item. No,
this one?
Yeah. And I'm going to switch 1 second to Hebrew. לכולם ברור מה ההבדל בין במה שרון כרגע מסביר לגבי איך משלמים מיסים על שיפוצים שונים, סוגים של שיפוצים שונים? יש מישהו שזה לא ברור לו? זה הזמן, בעברית.
תסביר גם בעברית, לא יכול להזיק.
יש, אני לא יודע, העברית שלי חלשה כי זה מושגים באנגלית, אבל direct expense, ההוצאות הישירות, הן הוצאות שאתה יכול בעצם לשים אותן ישר בלי depreciation ולהפחית את חבות המס שלך.
תן לי רגע לעזור פה.
אוקיי.
כל דבר שנחשב לשיפוץ, אני אחרי זה אגיד את זה גם באנגלית, אבל כל דבר שהוא שיפוץ שוטף, הדייר התלונן שנשבר לו הברז, החלפתי למישהו דלת, החלון נשבר, זה נכנס תחת ריפר. הכוונה היא שנכנס תחת ריפר זה שאני בסוף השנה מזדכה על הסכום הזה במלואו באותה שנה, באותה שנת מס. כל שיפוץ שהמהות שלו הוא שינוי שווי הנכס, כמו capital expenditures, גג, שיפוץ מלא של הנכס, אני לא מזדכה על זה בסוף השנה, זה הולך ל-depreciation over 27.5 years. אז זה לא שאם היום לקחתי בניין, ועשיתי לו gut renovation, בסוף השנה, ועלה לי $50,000, אני לא יכול בסוף השנה לבוא ולהגיד, היה לי $50,000 הוצאות, תזכו אותי על $50,000, כי זה נחשב capitalized. זה משהו שהוא משפיע על אורך הנכס, ולכן הוא נכנס תחת depreciation של 27.5 שנים, או מה שזה לא יהיה. אבל אם הדייר מתלונן אליי, ואומר לי, נשבר לי החלון, והלכתי ותיקנתי לו את החלון, וזה עלה לי $1,000, את כל $1,000 אני יכול להזדכות בסוף השנה. הבנו?
יש לי שאלה, אם כבר אנחנו בעצירה. אמרנו שהדפריאשן הוא ל-27.5 שנים או 39 שנים, לא כל כך משנה.
תלוי בסוג הנכס, כן.
תלוי בסוג הנכס. נניח עכשיו קניתי את הנכס, אני ב-T0. אחרי 5 שנים עשיתי את ה-Cost Segregation, הרווחתי מזה, יופי, יש לי תזרים יותר גבוה, נמכר, מכרתי את הנכס למשקיע אחר. הוא יכול לעשות עוד פעם Cost Segregation, עוד פעם לזה?
כן, זה מתחיל ברגע שמישהו קונה.
כן. כל קנייה של נכס מתחילה את המעגל מחדש. כן, כן.
Okay. Are we clear about the difference between how we tax repairs, how we get tax refund for repairs versus improving the property, what's called capitalized? Everybody on the same page about the difference, why it's important? I'll assume the answer is yes.
Okay.
Let's continue.
I didn't go into that, but usually when I explain to people the ABC of depreciation, the simple example is if you buy a computer for a business, a laptop, let's say, and it costs you $3,000, I think it's everywhere, not just in the United States. You cannot deduct $3,000 as an expense. Your accountant will divide it to 3 years because that's the life of a laptop computer. And every year we'll deduct $1,000. What we are doing is we're allowing you to do the deduction over a year and a half, so you can actually virtually expense it versus as opposed to capitalize it, okay? And that keeps money in your pocket. That's really the important thing, okay?
Let's continue.
So let's continue. So this is, again, just a small differentiation. An expense will be on anything that is not an improvement to the property. If you don't change the roof completely, if you just change parts of it, it could be just considered an expense. But I want to go into something that will explain to you a little bit more why this is important. So this is a little detail, but I will point out to you. Can you see this part, by the way? It's not hidden on your side, because it's a little hidden for me.
We can see it. We can see everything.
Okay.
We can see the entire
So
slide.
what is really important here is this. What you see here is the result of a cost segregation study of a certain property. And it tells you the value that is assigned to each component. So for example, the roofing is valued at $66,975. The HVAC $179. The electrical said this and this. The plumbing this and this, and it goes on and on to different components. Now, what this here tells you is something very important, and this comes from the tangible property regulation that I mentioned to you, is that if you have, for example, if the HVAC system is valued at $179,000 and you spend $50,000 on it, the ratio is between 30 to 35%, meaning it's actually the simple one is to say 33%. If you spend less than 33% on the value of that HVAC, you can expense it, okay? Now, maybe in HVAC, it's not a good example, but if you look at a roof, for example, this roof, and it's valued at $66,000, if you spend a third of it to repair the roof, you can actually deduct it all as an expense, okay? So a lot of investors, and you'd be surprised how many are using this on many, many different components in a system, in a property, will plan their renovations and betterments to a property using this technique because it allows them to expense more than to capitalize, okay? Now, the only way they can do it is if they have what's called a cost-based depreciation schedule, which is what you see here on the left, the different numbers given to the different property components, and your accountant is using this regulation to save you even more money in the long term. So the initial saving is when you do the study, you get immediate saving by accelerating the depreciation on the components and receiving tax credit or tax cash. The long-term value is to use this approach that I'm showing you an example from, and again, it could be applied to many, many different components in the property. Okay? Let me see if I can. Okay, great. By the way, any question on this thing? Because this is really, this is not for you to know. This is really for the CPA or CPA to know. But you need to understand it so you can even discuss it and plan according to this, okay? And can really add a lot of savings beyond what you save initially. Okay, here's a question that you didn't ask, but I want to ask you. So that, can you go back in time and take expenses that you capitalized in the past and now expense them? And the answer to that is yes. So in other words, we can go back in time and, for example, if you bought a property in 2020, okay, and you just use a straight line depreciation method, you can change that to cost-based depreciation, doing a study on the property as is, including all the expenses that you had on the property throughout the years. And I'll tell you in a minute that it's a very easy thing to provide, by the way. And based on that, we can do a cost-based depreciation on the property and give you back tax credit that you could have got in 2020, you can get it today, okay? Now, why did I say it's very easy? Because if you bought a property in 2020, 21, 23, 24, or before, we usually go back about 7, 8 years. I mentioned that before. We don't recommend going back before that, usually. It depends. But if you cannot go very much back, because remember, if you didn't do it, over the years, you already depreciated the property. So there is not much meat, as we say, left to work with, okay? Now, how do we go back in time? First of all, your accountant has what's called depreciation schedule, and that is usually a one-page, by the way. It's very simple, and it includes the cost of the property when you bought it and all the expenses that you had, not in detail, but in total, all the expenses, the renovations, and the additional things that you have. Your accountant must have that. And when we are looking at all the property, instead of sending us all, information like address, how much it costs, when you bought it, we just ask for the depreciation schedule, and your accountant give it to you with a push of a button. It's very simple. It gives us all the information that we can work with, okay? So under the new regulation, you can go back in time and basically create a new cash flow from tax credit that did not take in 2020 or before that, okay? Now, this is not an amendment to your tax return. It doesn't mean you amend your tax return, absolutely not. What you need to do when you go back at older, what I call old properties, not ones that were purchased in 25, you basically fill up a form that's called 3115. It's change of accounting method. Either your accountant does it or we can do it for you, but it's a very known IRS form called 3115, change of accounting method. You basically tell the IRS, I am using cost-based depreciation schedule for my property. Okay? Great. I want to touch one more thing or two more things, and then maybe we'll stop for more questions. So basically, just as a summary, you can apply any new unit or construction or any addition made to a property as to what's called a bonus depreciation, okay? Okay, sorry. I want to just explain to you what is bonus depreciation and what does it mean to have 100% bonus depreciation. So this is a separate clause that comes with the budget bill, the US budget bill, that rides on top of cost segregations, okay? So what it means is that what you can do with 100% bonus depreciation is take all the components that are less than 20 years depreciation lifespan, that includes the 15, 7, and 5 years that I mentioned to you, and apply them all in the first year. So you actually allocate all your depreciation expense into year number one. The bottom line of that is that you increase your depreciation expense even a bit more. And again, that's another incentive that rides on top of cost segregation. It's not part of the TPR or cost segregation process. It's a law that is part of the US budget bill that allows you to benefit a bit more from, not a bit more, could be a lot more, from doing cost segregation on the property. So this actually first was done in 2022. It goes down 20% every year. So it went down to 80% in 23 to 60%. And now, and I should give credit to the current president, we have to say that because it was done during Trump's first term, and now it's done again, bringing it back to 100% bonus depreciation, and really allows you to benefit even more from cost segregation study. Okay. I have a few examples.
Can I ask a question about the 100% depreciation?
Yes.
So this applies, I assume, not to the entire building, but only to certain components of the building?
Correct. The whole process applies to what's called building unit or certain components, if you like, that are applicable for accelerated depreciation. And I gave you some example, but think of anything that is not part of the structure, very likely that it will be relevant and just need to be assigned the years of depreciation on it. For example, an HVAC system will be 15 years, parking space will be 15 years, certain components, even landscaping is 5 years, and so on and so forth. Once you reduce it, and I have an example of something that I'm actually working these days, so I want to show you some real examples.
Is it that just some components are 1 year? Is that what you're showing in this slide, or is it that you can take the HVAC and do it instead of 15 year in 1 year?
You get the benefits of the 15 years condensed into the first year. So if you remember the chart that I showed you, the graph that shows you the increase in your expenses, think of it as increasing it even more because you condense the first few years into the first year. Okay?
Okay, yeah, so I understand the concept. I just don't understand. So why, I mean, why having the definition of HVAC is 15 years and paving is 15 years if you're gonna squeeze it into 1 year anyway?
No, so that's why I explained, because this bonus depreciation is really not part of the cost segregation law. Cost segregation basically just says you can take components, building units, and assign a value to them and a shorter lifespan, accelerate the depreciation, increase your expenses, and keep money in your pocket. But the government said, okay, that's great, but we want to give investors even more incentive. I mean, that's how the US works, you know, with giving incentives to investors so they reinvest their money. So they say, we want to give you even more incentive. So they actually ride on top of the cost of the tangible property regulation or the cost segregation law and says, no, you don't have to wait, you know, to spend it over 15, 7 or 5 years. We will allow you to accelerate it all within the first year. Okay, so it's you follow what I mean? It's Danielle, right? Danielle is asking.
Yes.
So you follow what I mean, Danielle? It's don't see it as it makes sense. Your question is very good. Why if you can do it in 1 year, why separate? So it's just basically riding on top of the cost segregation law to give you additional benefit. Okay.
So this is only for new stuff that I add, right?
I'm sorry?
This is only for new, let's say I bought
acquisitions in 2025, if that's what you mean.
I mean, okay, the acquisition was in 2025, but this is only for new work that I've done on the property, new improvements, or
No, it's for
also
everything.
for...
It's for the cost of the property plus the improvement. The cost basis that we are using to calculate this is what you paid for the property and what you spend on it. But again, sometimes people spend money after 2 years, not immediately, right? And even if you do it immediately, and I'll give you an example if you want of something very real that I'm doing now, one of the things, it's highly recommended. Most investors, first of all, I should say, probably over 99% of investors today of real estate properties in the values that I mentioned to you all do cost segregation. This is a process that is mainstream today. Everybody knows that there is money there on the table that you can keep in your pocket. So everybody does that. And what was I talking about? Yeah, so the cost basis is based on the cost of the building and all the expenses that you had on renovations. But if you do renovation a year after or 2 years after, you can still benefit from having cost-based depreciation like I showed you before. You can use that depreciation schedule to expense things that you cannot do today without that, because you have no idea you cannot assign yourself a value to the different component. And this is an important question. Your CPA is not supposed to do that by the law, by the way. The law defined that it has to be done by a building engineering company, and I'll explain to you who is CSSI, that specialize in cost segregation, okay? So once you have those values assigned to the different component, you can use the tangible property regulations to benefit from, let's say, renovation that you do a year or 2 years after. But I want to point something really important to you guys, because I mentioned that you get 100% bonus on 2025. But guess what? If you purchase a property, let's say in 2020, okay, 6 years ago, the calculation, because 2022 falls in the middle, the calculation can be based on 100% bonus that was given in 2022. Okay? So when we do the calculation for property purchase in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, you get 100% bonus depreciation as well. If it was purchased, let's say in 23, you will get 80%. But remember, this is not the main thing. This is an additional bonus. That's why it's called a bonus. It's not the main thing, but it's another bonus that you get on top of the cost segregation benefits that I mentioned. Okay? I want to see, if you allow me, I want to see if I can show you something like really quick, because I don't want to run out of time. I crossed out this, but this is a real example. It is a big property, okay? Can you see it's a little small?
Ron, you go back to presentation mode so we can see it big.
Oh, sorry. Okay, it is stretched out a little bit because I don't want to show but just want to mention to you, this is an office warehouse. Basically, it's a warehouse building with some offices, okay? Now, this is a high value item, so it's $5,800,000. It's actually, it means, and that's the case here, that the property actually costs $7,200,000, but we have to deduct the land. Now, let me tell you something. This is probably wrong, because this is a warehouse within a larger warehouse development area. So the buyer here does not necessarily own all the land. There's a certain allocation of land, but not as high as we calculated. But what I'm showing you is an actual proposal. When you're going to get from me a proposal, that's what it's going to look like. One of the pages, or the main page, okay? So what it shows here, that this property, which is $7,200,000, the cost basis is $5,800,000. Like I told you, it's going to be higher than that. It was purchased in 2025, so you don't see it here, but somewhere in the bottom it will say that this client is going to receive 100% bonus depreciation. And what it shows you here, that we estimate a saving between $276,000 to $447,000 on this property. So this is about, I would say, 8%. Now, I can tell you that we will probably be at the high end or above the high end value here. I already can tell you that we're probably going to save more than $500,000 on this property, which is about 10% of the cost basis, because we are very conservative in our offer. We don't want to offer you something and then you're going to say, oh, but we made less. So we're being conservative. That's one reason, because we don't want this to disappoint. But the other reason is when we go to every property and do a site review, somebody physically goes to every property, take pictures, a lot of photos of the properties, and then we analyze that, and we find all the components which we don't know about before we do a site visit, okay? So I know, and I say it from experience doing many like that, that this will be this will be higher than what you see here. And the return on investment, you can guess how much this thing costs. I believe this property is about $5,500 to do, or $66,000 to do, maybe.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
How did you get to the fact that they're going to pay appreciation, the straight line, $43,000?
43, where do you see that?
Second line. It says 2025.
That's easy. Yeah, that's easy. Take the amount, divide it by 39 years. This is, tell me if I'm right. Divided by 39 years. How much do you get?
148,717.
How much?
148,717. $5.8 million divided by 39 is 148, almost $149,000 a year.
Then I have to check this for you. That's interesting. I think that I need to check why it is 43 here. I'm sure there was an explanation, but let me see. No, I'll give you an answer, Tal. I don't know. I have to give you an answer on this. That's interesting. Thank you for checking it. But again, it's that's the annual depreciation, and like the one you get, that's the straight line depreciation. Is that 140?
Yeah, if you do straight line, if you do
Okay.
$5.8 million divided by 39,
Okay,
that would be more than $100,000 because you are at 58.
right. Yeah, okay, I'll check it out. I'll let you know. So let me see. Oh, here is another one interesting example of what you can save by doing cost segregation. So this is called partial asset disposition. And basically it shows you how you can make money from garbage. So you may have seen properties like this when you come in and you take everything, you throw away whatever it's in the property, and it goes to the dumpster, and it's just garbage. Well, guess what? If you do cost segregation on the property before renovating it, and you assign value to different component, it could be the carpeting, it could be whatever you see here in this junk pile, it could be other dividers, it could be doors, windows, electrical, whatever you put out here has a value in the book. When you take this out of the property and put something, and now doesn't have to be only when you buy a property, this could also be 2-3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, when you do such renovation and you have a cost-based depreciation schedule, you take the value out, you take those components out, they have a value in the book. So instead of just being garbage, they now can be deducted as an expense, okay? And this process it's a section 168 in the tangible property regulation. It defines that when you do remodeling or replacement or renovating a place, you can deduct expense, basically items like HVAC, electrical, interior, roofs, and carpeting, and many other items like that. Okay.
I'm not sure, you guys understand what he just explained, which is very important because it can save you a lot of money.
Yep.
This is like a double jeopardy on the same property. You guys understand what he explained? Or to explain it again? בעברית להסביר?
Let me say something in English before you explain. So just, and then Tal, you can add. Let's say you gave a value of $40,000 to an HVAC system that was in this place, okay? Over the years, the HVAC, of course, is not worth. Well, if you buy it and the HVAC is very old and bad, you won't give it a value of $40,000. You give it a value of maybe $5,000. But when you take this out of the unit to replace with the new, you can actually expense that $5,000. Yes, Tal.
אני שואל שוב פעם בעברית אם הבנתם מה שהוא הסביר עכשיו, זה מאוד חשוב במיוחד לחבר'ה שעושים פליפים או קונברז'נים. שאני אסביר את זה בעברית? אין תשובות.
כן, כן, כן.
כן, תסביר.
בוא נגיד ואני לא קונה בניין, sorry guys, I'm gonna do it in Hebrew for a second. בוא נגיד ואני קונה בניין שאני הולך לעשות דמו להכל gut renovation. אוקיי? ובוא נגיד לדוגמה, ואתם יכולים להסביר, להשליך את זה על דלתות ישנות, חלונות ישנים ומה שזה לא יהיה. אבל אנחנו ניקח את הדוגמה שרון השתמש בה, שזה מערכת HVAC. בוא נגיד ויש לנו מערכת HVAC ישנה. מערכת HVAC ישנה הזאת שווה במקום $50,000 $10,000. עשיתי cost segregation, וב-cost segregation עכשיו אני מקבל depreciation על $10,000. נכון? מעולה. אם עשיתי את זה לפני שהוצאתי את ה-HVAC הישן, אני מקבל depreciation על $10,000. קניתי את הנכס, עשיתי את ה-cost segregation, קיבלתי את $10,000, עכשיו הוצאתי את ה-HVAC הזה, שמתי HVAC חדש. עכשיו אני מקבל זיכוי גם על ה-HVAC החדש. אז עכשיו אני מקבל בעצם פעמיים tax benefit על HVAC שהוצאתי, גם ככה זרקתי אותו, ועל ה-HVAC החדש שהתקנתי. במקום שאם הייתי עושה את זה אחרי, הייתי רק מקבל על ה-HVAC החדש.
נכון מאוד. מה שהיית זורק לפח זה garbage.
הבנתם?
זה פשוט ההבדל בין להתייחס לבניין, למבנה כיחידה אחת, שאז אין שום הפרדה וזה לא משנה מה אתם מוציאים החוצה או שמים בפנים, לבין ההפרדה ש-Cost Segregation נותן לכם.
הבנתם מה שהסברנו? עוד פעם.
בעצם לפי ההיגיון הזה, כאילו נגיד עושים פליפ, אז עדיף קודם לעשות את ה-Cost Segregation, ורק אז לשפץ?
כן. חד משמעית התשובה היא כן.
כן, אגב, בדוגמה שנתתי לכם לפני רגע עם ה-warehouse וה-office שנקנה ב$7 מיליון, הם הולכים לעשות שם שיפוצים בערך בעוד $300,000, אבל זה ייגמר רק בסוף שנה, באמצע שנה הבאה. אז ההחלטה היא לעשות את ה-Cost Segregation עכשיו, א', לקבל את ה-100% בונוס ל-2025, ב', ברגע שיש לו Cost-Based Depreciation Schedule אצל הרואה חשבון, כל הדברים שהוא יעשה בעתיד, אם הוא יוציא משהו וזה, הוא יקבל, כמו שטל הסביר, הוא בעצם יקבל את ה-benefit שוב פעם. כלומר, אני תמיד אומר, יש את ה-short term, את ה-immediate benefit, ויש את ה-long term benefit של מה שאתם יכולים לקבל, אם יש לכם את ה-schedule הזה available. בסדר, אנחנו סיימנו שעה, אז אני רוצה רק להגיד לכם משהו חשוב לגבי החברה שאני עובד איתה, CSSI, שהיא בעצם החברה שהמציאה את התחום הזה. CSSI בעצם נוסדה כבר לפני כמעט 25 שנה, הם היו היועצים, הרואי חשבון שהקים את CSSI, שאגב היה גם מהנדס בניין, הוא היה היועץ של Hospital Association of America, זה הגוף שסיפרתי לכם שטבע את ה-IRS, ומזה הוא התחיל את החברה אחרי שזכו בבית המשפט העליון, ומזה נולד החוק החדש הזה. ה-CSSI קיימת הרבה מאוד שנים, זו חברה שמבוססת על ידע בהנדסת בניין, שזה מאוד מאוד חשוב, מה שאין, וזה גם דרישה של החוק, מה שאין בדרך כלל לרואי חשבון או לאחרים, ולכן צריכים לעבור את התהליך הזה בצורה מסודרת. שאלה מישהו? אוקיי, המספר הזה הוא מאוד לא מדויק, עשו כבר יותר מ-60 ומשהו אלף סטאדיז עד היום, ומאוד חשוב להגיד שמעולם לא היה עודד, תעצמות שגם לא יהיה כמובן. חשוב להגיד זה שאנחנו עושים רק Cost Segregation Schedule, אנחנו לא נותנים שירותים, זה לא שירות נלווה לכל מיני דברים אחרים, זאת המומחיות וזה הפוקוס, וברוך השם יש לנו הרבה עבודה בזה. החברה היא עצמאית, היא עובדת לפי החוק, ויש חוקים מאוד ברורים מה שצריך לעשות את זה, וגם מאוד affordable מבחינת ה-cost. I noticed that I just switched from Hebrew to English, but that's okay. And we provide a free, no obligation estimate on any property that you like us to evaluate for you. And Tal knows I've done it a couple of times for him. So all I need to know is, let's see, I think it shows it in the next slide. All I need to have is these items. As if we are talking about a property purchased now before 25, anything purchased 24, 23, 2020, the best thing is to give us the depreciation schedule. You just ask your CPA, your accountant, with a push of a button, he will provide it to you. It's very easy. And this will give us the cost, the renovation expenses that you have, everything. So you don't have to tell us anything beside that. It has the address, it has everything. Otherwise, if it's a new property, we ask to know the property type and the location, a full detailed address, the cost without land, or you can give us just the cost and we'll calculate the land, we'll allocate the value for the land, the purchase date, okay, and any major renovations that you have done, let's say within 2025, if you're talking about 25 properties, or if it's before, we will get it from the depreciation schedule. So if you give me the property address, cost, and purchase date, that we will give you a very detailed estimate, not a detail, but an estimated, a good estimate on how much you can save. Okay? So that is basically it. Maybe I'll say a few words, last words in Hebrew. אני עובד הרבה מאוד, רוב הלקוחות שלי הייתי אומר 60-70% ישראלים. אני עובד עם הרבה רואי חשבון גם ישראלים וגם לא ישראלים. השנה לבד, דרך הסטאדיז האלה, אני אומר את זה, אולי זה נשמע קצת שיווקי, אבל זה אמיתי לגמרי, הבאתי לחיסכון של יותר $16 מיליון למשקיעים, בכספי מיסים שנשארו אצלהם בכיס. מה שזה אומר, זה כמו שהראיתי לכם את הדוגמה, שהבחור חוסך $500,000, תחשבו על עוד 30 כאלה או יותר, עשינו הרבה יותר מ-30 סטאדיז השנה, שאני עשיתי כלומר, וזה מה שהכוונה. וכמו שאמרתי, היום Cost Seg Essentials זה באמת מיינסטרים, אבל לפני שאני מסיים, שכחתי להגיד דבר חשוב, מתי זה לא רלוונטי לעשות Cost Seg Essentials? לפחות בשבילכם לדעת, אז קודם כל, אם זה פרופרטי של $400,000, החיסכון יכול להיות, נגיד גם אם תחסכו את ה-7-8%, יחד עם העלות, יש כאלה שעושים את זה, דרך אגב עשיתי לא מעט כאלה של 350,000, אבל הרוב עושים את זה בפרופרטיז טיפה מעל לזה. אם זה פרופרטי שנקנה לפני הרבה מאוד שנים, נגיד יותר מ10 שנים, אז גם כן פחות רלוונטי. אם זה short term, אם מישהו קונה בשביל לעשות פליפ, אז בדרך כלל לטווחים קצרים פחות משתלם, כי אתה נהנה מהבנפיץ, אבל אתה תקבל, בסופו של דבר אתה תצטרך, כשתמכור את הפרופרטי אתה תצטרך לשלם את זה. אלא אם כן אתה עושה 1031 או כל מיני דברים כאלה. איזה עוד, זה הדברים העיקריים. כן, אגב, צריך לשים לב, 1031 exchange, אני מניח שאנשים יודעים מה זה, כן, זה שאתה קונה פרופרטי על בסיס של capital gains מפרופרטי אחר שמכרת, אז הקוסט הוא בעצם נמוך יותר, כי אתה צריך להוריד מהקוסט ששילמת, או בעצם אתה מוריד את זה כבר בקלוזינג, אתה מוריד מהקוסט את מה שעשית capital gains, אז אנחנו צריכים לדעת את זה גם כשאנחנו מגישים בקשה לקבל proposal, שהפרופרטי הזה נקנה with 1031 exchange, for example. אבל הייתי אומר שברוב המקרים, בכל הרכישות החדשות, שווה לכם מאוד להסתכל על הצעה, לראות מספרים, זה לא עולה כסף, וזה שווה מאוד.
We have a question through the message from Amnon. It says, as a thumb rule, how much depreciation can I get for a condo apartment?
Okay, at what value? We don't know the value, right?
Okay, so yeah, so again, it depends very much on the unit, it depends on the cost, it depends how it's constructed. So how many windows do you have? How many doors do you have? What type of HVAC unit do you have? What type of, everything that's the point of it. It's a breakdown of that specific unit. Just so you understand how the process goes, they're going to send somebody either to take pictures and start counting doors and windows and the specific spec you have in your specific unit. So you can ask, it's not a thumb rule. If I'm going and I'm buying a condo that is, let's say like a loft, it's a big open space. There is no doors. It's just a big open space with windows, and one door and a window is different than I'm buying a 7,000 square foot an apartment that have 17 bedrooms and each one of them have their own windows and their own bathroom, and it's all master bathroom and doors and whatever it is. So it depends very much, Amnon, to your question. There is no,
I do.
It's a very specific, it's a very suited to that specific unit.
Right. But I want to add that I've done quite a few condos. The good thing about it that you can even do with the 400,000, let's say, or 350,000 and still get nice benefits. If it's more, then you'll get more benefits. But because you do not own the land, the cost basis is the full cost amount in most cases. And the units that I've done, The saving was very significant because condos above $500,000 usually have nice flooring, nice fixtures, nice appliances, even appliances, okay, in the property, kitchen cabinets, bathroom cabinets, special, the shower, whatever you call it, the glass doors in the shower, the air condition, so there's many components, and in many cases in condominiums, I saw savings that are on the high end, 10%, or sometimes I would say even more than that.
רון, אפשר שאלה?
בטח.
בשקף הקודם אמרת שעשיתם איזה 60,000 case study ולא היה אודיט. מה הכוונה אודיט? אולי עוד שקף אחורה. מה הכוונה אודיט? מה, הם כאילו עושים ביקורת למס הכנסה?
45, אבל זה 60 ומשהו היום. הכוונה היא שחס וחלילה אף אחד לא רוצה אודיט. הכוונה היא שלא היה אודיט על העבודה שלנו. יכול להיות אודיט משהו אחר, אני לא יודע, אבל אנחנו מתחייבים בחוזה איתך, כשאנחנו עושים סטאדי, אנחנו מחויבים שאם יש אודיט שקשור בחישובים של ה-Cost Segregation, CSSI בחינם, זאת אומרת, זה כחלק מהעבודה, חלק מהמחיר, נותנים את כל הייעוץ, את כל התמיכה, את כל מה שצריך, כדי לתמוך בסטאדי. מה שאני אומר זה שלא היה אף פעם, ב-20 ומשהו שנים, 25 שנים, לא היה אף פעם דרישה לבדוק את העבודה שעשינו, שזה סימן טוב. היו דרישות כאלה במקומות אחרים, אז אני לא אכנס לזה, אבל אנחנו בהחלט, ואנחנו רואים תעצות שככה ימשיך. אנחנו חברה...
מה זה, כאילו אם יש הגזמות, אז ה-IRS יש לו איזה טריגר כזה?
בוודאי, כמו כל דבר כזה, בוודאי, ככה בהחלט. אבל אני יכול להגיד לך שה-IRS יש לו הרבה יותר טריגרים על כאלה שלא עושים Cost Segregation, ועוד פעם, זה לא בשביל... אני יודע שזה נשמע כמו משפט מחירתי, אבל אני חושב שתבינו, כי כשאתה לא עושה Cost Segregation ואתה מחליט, אתה רואה חשבון ביחד, לא משנה, לעשות expense על משהו שצריך להיות capitalized, זה פתח לבעיה. עכשיו, אני יודע שיש את הפיתוי לעשות את זה, וזה בדיוק הנקודה החשובה, יש את הפיתוי לעשות את זה, כי כשאתה עושה expense, אתה מעלה את ההוצאה, אתה שומע כזה בכיס. אבל בעצם Cost Segregation גם מאפשר לך לעשות את זה בצורה יותר חכמה, וגם שומר עליך, שלא תעשה דבר לא נכון, אוקיי? כי הוא מגדיר מה הם כל הקומפוננטות, ואז אתה יודע בדיוק שאם השקעת במזגן, לא משנה, תיקנת גג, גג זה capital expense, לא משנה איך תראה את זה, זה capital expense, אבל אם אתה זוכר את מה שהראיתי לך את השקף הזה, אם אתה עושה תיקון של הגג ומוציא עליו פחות משליש מערכו, אתה יכול לעשות expense מלא, אתה מבין? וזה יתרון מאוד גדול. עכשיו, איך אתה יודע שעשית שליש? אתה צריך שיהיה לך cost-based depreciation schedule שמגדיר שהגג שווה 60, 70, 100 אלף דולר, אז אתה יודע בדיוק כמה זה שליש, מאוד פשוט. הרבה למשל משקיעים גדולים, אנשים שעושים נדל"ן גדול, יעשו למשל שליש בדצמבר, שליש בינואר, ונגיד תקנו את החלק בשנה אחרי, כי לא חייבים תמיד לעשות את ההחלפה מלאה של הגג. או נגיד כאלה שיש להם מולטי פמילי, יש כמה מבנים, אתה משפץ, עושה שליש של, אתה יודע, שליש מהגגות במבנה, עושה עוד שליש בתחילת שנה אחרי זה, וככה אתה עושה את זה וחוסך כסף גדול, וחוסך את זה על הרבה מאוד דברים. זהו, חברים, אני קודם כל באמת, א', תודה על הזמן, דבר שני, אני גם באמת אודה לכם אם תצלמו או תיקחו את השקף הזה עם הפרטים שלי, טל יכול להעביר, אני בטוח לכולם, ואני מאוד אודה לכם, א', שתשתפו, כי אני חושב שזה נושא מאוד חשוב לדעת עליו, שלא הרבה יודעים מספיק, וב', אם אתם מכירים, רואי חשבון או אחרים, אני ממש אודה ואשמח לשמוע מכם. ואגב, הרבה מאוד משקיעים שיושבים בארץ, שעושים השקעות בארצות הברית, עושים כמובן Cost Segregation, זה גם נכון דרך אגב למשקיעים אמריקאים, או מי שיש לו אזרחות אמריקאית, לא משנה, שמשקיע מחוץ לארצות הברית, הוא עדיין, הוא מחויב לחוק האמריקאי, ועדיין יכול לעשות גם Cost Segregation, אפילו על פרופרטיז מחוץ לארצות הברית, כל מקום. טוב, תודה רבה. Thank you very much, טל.
I'm going to send everybody an email. They're going to have a copy, a link to a recording of the conversation, and obviously the contact information for Ron. If anybody have any problem, contact him, can approach me, and I'll be more than happy to help.
תודה רבה לכם, חברים. תודה. בהצלחה.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, ladies as well, of course. Bye-bye. תודה, רון.
ביי, ביי, להתראות.